a Nobody's Project production. Canadian anthropologist and Order of Canada recipient Richard Bourget-Lee bought a large black ox and brought it to the camp of the Kalahari Desert tribe of the democracies for his contribution to their Christmas feast back in 1964. He had been living with the tribe and studying their culture for over a year. He was finishing up his studies soon and he would be heading home to Canada. Upon sourcing the beast and finalising his purchase, rumour and gossip spread in murmurs amongst the tribespeople. One morning, a group of women came up to him and asked if it was true that he had bought a large ox for the feast. To his dismay, he didn't receive any praise for his action, but instead was accused of buying an old worthless ox, a bag of bones with not enough fat and meat to feed all the people. Richard was an expert on the tribe's nutritional needs and knew that this couldn't possibly be true. So he went and spoke to a tribe leader who responded with the same. That bag of bones won't feed all our people. There's not enough fat or meat on that old worthless beast. He then went and spoke to a good friend within the tribe and he also responded with, "Why did you buy that old bag of bones with no fat or meat on it? We may eat at the feast, but there will not be enough and we'll have no energy for dancing afterwards." Richard was disappointed and he tried to purchase another animal. He didn't have any luck, and in an act of defiance, he decided to give them the animal for Christmas anyway. On the day of slaughter, Richard was pleased to see that the animal was indeed full of fat and meat. Everyone feasted for 2 days and no one went hungry or missed out. Although happy with the outcome, Richard still had an itch to scratch regarding all this carry-on the tribespeople made about his ox being a bag of bones. So Richard went to his friend in the tribe again and asked him, "Why did you all say my ox was a bag of bones when clearly it was full of fat and meat?" His friend responded with, "Arrogance." It was always customary in the tribe to always speak of acts or achievements this way. If a young tribesman comes home from a hunt and boasts about his kill, then he may think that he is above the other tribespeople, that he is better than them, and that he should be their leader. Whether it is a kill from a hunt or any other deed, they are all equal to any other task completed by anyone else in the tribe. This custom was one way the tribes of the Kalahari Desert ensured that any member of their tribe, especially young men, were reminded to be humble and that their acts do not make them better or above others. In a world of celebrities, influencers, individualism, and the social media of self, can we take some knowledge or wisdom from the tribespeople of the democracies? Aren't all our individual achievements, whether they be great or small, or just some equal part of this experiment called the human civilization? We can see how over the last few centuries there's been a trend to look back and understand history through the great man of history narrative. Our education systems continue to this very day to teach history through the lens of who did what, where and when, not so much the why. Great men from King Leonidas of Sparta, Alexander the Great of Macedonia, Scipio Africanus and Hannibal of Carthage, Caesar and the other Romans, Clovis and Charlemagne, Alfred the Great of England, Genghis Khan, Christopher Columbus and Magellan, Napoleon and Lord Nelson, Charles de Gaulle and Churchill. And now we apparently have the business versions of the great man of history, including John D. Rockefeller, Cornelius Vanderbilt and Andrew Carnegie, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg and now Elon Musk. As a species, we really have embraced the great man of history narrative. It's easy to teach, to remember, and to inspire emerging male leaders. But what this easiest of methods also does is that it takes away the achievements of all the millions of people, especially the women, who enabled, supported, and facilitated these great men's pathological successes. It negates so much of the society that supported these so-called great men. It washes over the humanity we have all had for each other across all our history. And quite often it sanitizes those negatively affected by these great men's achievements, the devastation and the destruction left in their wake. Gates, Jobs, Zuckerberg and Musk wouldn't be so great if we remembered that there are tens of thousands of people who created our first computing capabilities. The internet was given to the world thanks to CERN, the Hadron Collider team in France and Switzerland, for free. And the many, many other small to global sized hardware and software achievements that were required before each of these men were able to achieve their greatness. In a hyper-capitalist world, these men have found immense financial success through being at the right place at the right time with the right know-how and a ruthlessness to ensure they profit first when these new technologies hit the market. Imagine a world if we had kept the software licensing relatively open source and free, instead of allowing Bill Gates to lock up a lot of software in patents and copyright. Wouldn't it be great to see how the great men of our time handle a group of tribeswomen, reminding them that they aren't that special? Maybe we once had our own ways of humiliating the boastful and keeping these characters in our own communities in check. Maybe we had this cultural and societal wisdom once, but it's clearly been forgotten. Too Many Arseholes is a social project looking at the rise of pathological behaviours in our society and the erosion of social trust, creating a better conversation around why this is, and finding a way forward to a greater humanity. This podcast is also part of a larger social project that we want you, the listener, to join in on. Key to this project is bringing together threads from many academic disciplines to create a body of knowledge we can develop with you to help us all with having better conversations around these pathological behaviours in our personal and social circles. Thanks for joining us today for Season 1, Episode 6. In today's episode, we challenge our social memory and explore the progression and regression of our social maturity throughout our past. We take some insights from the people of the Dobe tribes of the Kalahari Desert and find other modern-day examples. We also draw correlations between the great men of the past and the great men of today. Don't stress. They're not positive ones. We examine the different models of decentralised power structures and democracies compared to centralised powered structures and tyranny, and finally bring it all together with some good news for once. And so thanks for joining us and coming along on this journey of reflection and discovery as we attempt to unpack and better understand why there's just too many arseholes. Let's kick off today's episode by looking back at episode 3, How the Fuck Did We Get Here?, where we took you through a succinct 300,000-year history, looking at it through the lens of social evolution. Key to our social evolution was the push and pull of community expansion versus the ability for humans to adapt, evolve socially, and maintain stable societies. Important to our successful societies was maintaining social standards as well as adapting to new communities, new cities, kingdoms, and empirical needs to hold the whole bloody things together. Remembering that in some way these largest of human groupings are some of the pinnacles of human achievement. These high-functioning societies with many moving parts are also the most fragile if the social cohesion and underpinning social trust is degraded. Not necessarily broken, just degraded. At times, our social evolutions can be many steps forward, as when the Greeks and the Romans conducted their democratic experiments. Sometimes it can be 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards, similar to the English Civil War of the 17th century. It can be 1 step forward and 2 steps backwards, like when the Romans conquered England and then pulled out a few hundred years later, causing the Dark Ages. Or it could be many, many steps backwards. The devastation brought by Genghis Khan on the Chinese, Islamic, and the other peoples across the Asian continent is still evident today, over 800 years later. But the lessons are still the same. They are still just our basic human and social needs. We can only be who we are when we work together to maintain societies that are stable, predictable, and safe. And we can only do this when we have social cohesion, which brings us all back to the central topic of today's episode. Have we forgotten how important social trust is? How to nurture social responsibilities in our youngest generation? How to identify and manage pathological behaviours when they rise through our social ranks? And how we will suffer if our basic social standards are degraded, attacked, or forgotten. One of our major themes throughout this social project is to better understand the generational trauma cycle. This multi-generational behavioural pattern perpetuates pathological and antisocial impacts into our society's future. It's the adults fostering hatred or the othering of people not like them in our children. It's the poor social skills children have when parents are unable to raise them up to full maturity because of war, famine, conquest, and other social disruptions. It's the antisocial home culture that too much alcohol brings to the table. It's the promotion of individualism over community that these pathological parents drive home in their children. There are so many other generational traumas we could include today, but we will need to bite a few off one episode at a time. At the heart of the generational trauma cycle is better understanding the capability of society's parents and carers to ensure babies up to 5 years old can grow their fullest complement of social neural structures. Then create a stable, safe, and predictable environment for children to mature as best they can, all the way through to adulthood. Children's abilities to socially mature will be directly affected by their parents and the local community supporting them. In these early years, kids are like sponges, soaking up and then wringing out all the behaviours and decisions made in front of them. The childhood needs of observation, education, involvement, and finally accountability are required for children to gradually increase their social responsibilities and then guide them through the final stages of their path to social maturity. To raise a child, you need a village. It's not just the parent's responsibility. Each child needs to be exposed to a good, positive cross-section of their community. A child's rites of passage were the formalised tribal and community events that brought each child closer and closer to becoming a recognised adult member of their society. Our 21st century lifestyle still includes rites of passage across all religions. The education system includes guidance and lessons for our children. Other leisure and outdoor programs also. In this 21st century society, there is no community-wide program for children, apart from the approach the education system has, which differs from school to school, city to city. All the other rites of passage are opt-in. Many children may not participate in any formal rites of passage. At the national level, national service in the military is the best known compulsory national program. Other voices have joined the debate by making potential suggestions, including a year of environmental service or community service. But it should probably fall on the parents to choose what rites of passage best suit their family and children. But whatever the solution may be, all children need to participate in a rites of passage program that has positive societal, humanitarian and environmental teachings. These programs can be wrapped up in religious, national or other ideologies. It's such an important lesson from our past that is now almost drowned out in this accelerating consume at all cost society. Whether it be ancient tribes, classic republics or empires, kingdoms or current nations, how a community and the broader society nurtures their children through their rites of passage, and how capable a nation's emerging adults are able to adapt to change, adhere to social standards, and maintain social trust has underpinned a society's social cohesion and also its inevitable success. The lessons we can learn from the Dobe tribes of the Kalahari Desert are poignant for today's culture. If it's a lesson we have lost, it hasn't been lost for long. The Australian and New Zealand tall poppy syndrome is a close resemblance of the shaming of the meat. In parts of both Australia and New Zealand, it is still socially acceptable to knock someone down a peg or two if they get a little bit too big for their boots. Sorry, we better translate that one for you. Within close social circles in a local community, if someone through their success in sport, business, academia or the arts, for example, starts acting as if they're above their peers or colleagues because of what they have achieved, then it is socially acceptable to remind them that they aren't that special. And this can be done through such strategies as humiliation, isolation, or acts like public stunts, protests, or social penalties. You might be good, but you're still one of us. And we're going to make sure you don't fucking forget it. You've got to love how we try to keep people in line down here. Not that it's working all that well these days with social media, but that's a whole other episode. So why have these social autoimmune systems? Why do the tribe maintain such a practice? Why do our Antipodeans like to knock down the tall poppies? Well, that's because they all know that the we is much more important than the me. Up until a few hundred years ago, the white colonising cultures of Australia and New Zealand were in the survive, adapt phase of their new societies. As a society, you can only survive and adapt successfully if you have social cohesion underpinned by social trust. These new colonies brought the British institutions and cultures with them that were stable and trustworthy, which is an incredible feat from the other side of the world. It was not an expectation that a new colony would survive, adapt and thrive up until the end of the 18th century. Most failed on their first attempt and many subsequent attempts. But the first fleet to Australia did survive. They adapted and they thrived. An interesting social factor contributing to this success lies in the knocking down of tall poppies, as does those that bring the shame to those that bring the meat to the tribes of the Kalahari Desert. We don't thrive once the me outweighs the we. When we shift as a society from community-mindedness to individualism, things start to strain. Peaceful societies start to turn to violence, and humanity, the collective us, the most central part of our survival and our success, is forgotten again. What we are looking for when we look back through history for social lessons and approaches are the proactive ones. The social structures that followed a child from the earliest forays from the home into their community, all the way through to their peak societal contributions, whether that be in a trade, a service, or all the way to the highest levels of leadership and social governance. Picking up where we left off with the Roman mos maiorum in the third episode, the strict age limits they included can give us insights into how intelligent and wise the Roman Republic really was. They had survived the time of the late Roman kings. The protest chants of "No Kings" hails from the Roman Republic. It has echoed all the way through history to this very day. But the rites of passage in Roman times didn't start as the young men entered the public arena. They began very early in a child's life. Before accepting their toga virilis, between the age of usually 14 to 17 years, the young boys would participate and learn to lead the religious sacraments and prayers in their home and community. This formalised social structure guided children all the way, should they be destined for the highest positions of their society, through to their mid-30s should they reach a senator's seat or become a consul. Being a dominantly patriarchal society, women didn't have their own formal or informal rites of passage or social stations in the Roman Republic. At this stage in our social maturity, women, once married or of marriage age, were treated as if they were minors and beholden to the male of the family and his extended male line. Alexander wasn't so great because his father gave him an amazing army, his generals were very gifted, and the Persian Empire was very unstable. In Alexander's wake were many decades of civil wars and great destruction to Eastern Europe and the Middle East. Caesar wasn't so great. He was born into a society stripped of capable men, elevated through the social structures ahead of his time, and decided not to adhere to the Roman Senate's instructions to not invade Gaul, so he could reap the wealth from that region for his own power and glory. Who else do we remember from our recent successful businesses like Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Facebook and Tesla, apart from these people? Thinking about the complexities of the achievements these companies have delivered over the last 5 decades, you'd easily come to the conclusion that many tens of thousands of people would be known for all their individual efforts within these organisations. But for each of these companies, our society really only remembers a few names, and they're mostly men. But right in front of us are also great women, some of the greatest ever if we can pull our heads out of our patriarchal asses for a few minutes. If you were born more than 10 years ago, then you are fortunate enough to have some memories of Elizabeth, Alexandra, Mary, Windsor. Whether you lived under her rule across the Commonwealth, adjacent to her rule in Europe and the Americas, or anywhere across the planet, Queen Elizabeth II brought her nation out of war recovery and led with humanity and humility through peaceful times for just over 70 years. Regardless of what the history books say, leading through peace times is harder than chasing conquest, wars, and chaos. Why are these great men so pathological? And more importantly, are the great men of today the same? Oh, sorry, silly question. What have we forgotten in our shift from institutions to businesses and corporations, where decades and even centuries of social and institutional knowledge and evolution has been let go for profits and shareholder satisfaction? And there are no age limits to modern day financial successes. Technology has brought instant wealth and success to every age group. Where there were societal holes with no commercialisation, it was quickly filled. And with these new societies where we promote those with wealth above all others, we also promote their behaviour, decisions and beliefs regardless of their moral grounding. We think they must be doing something right to be that rich, and reality couldn't be further from the truth. We collectively start to think life is about owning and controlling things. We need to consume more to win, and to win someone else needs to lose. That is classic pathological thinking. Democracies are the current solution to leadership across most first world countries. They are not, though, without their own issues. With decentralised power, we lose the strong man in charge trope, which has permeated throughout our history lessons. It's the purpose of democracies to avoid having autocrats, dictators, or even kings. But that's what we teach our children to this day. It's not surprising when one pops its head up every now and then. Democracies have not solved for this phenomenon. It harkens back to the Roman Republic and Greek democracies. In times of major trouble, a dictator can be authorised to lead the nation through a crisis for up to 6 months. And as we're about to see, the 21st century's definition of a dictator is a whole different kettle of fish. At the opposite end of the spectrum to democratic solutions to social leadership are the more tyrannical ones, where power and control are centralised to one person and/or one family. In these societies, there are perceived benefits such as agility to adapt, reduced bureaucracy restraints, and many others. But tyrants, dictators, and other king-like social leadership structures have some simple flaws that we just keep forgetting. The transition of power is one of society's oldest and greatest challenges. Monarchies, tyrannies, and similar methods of leadership do not take into consideration the highest levels of social maturity required to lead a kingdom or empire. They arrogantly trust their heirs will be like them and maintain the social cohesion. There's that word again. Trust. Anyway, the Macedonians and Mongols were the same. The incredible achievements of Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan's generations were quickly lost because their social cohesion fractured due to the fact that they were without social structures that were stable, safe, and predictable. The social structures with centralised powers fail is that they require implicit trust in their leader. The people trust that their leader is mentally and physically healthy while they lead. They trust that their leaders have them all in their consideration as they lead. Centralised control social leadership only works when the indirect associations the people have with their leader is a trustworthy one. Again, that word, trust. It binds our societies together, one way or the other. Unfortunately, most tyrants, dictators, kings, and emperors display pathological traits. That's why they are the ones in charge. And we know that significantly pathological people can't be trusted. They can't think in this higher socially minded way. They just don't have the hardware to run the software. A tyrannically led society quickly turns into a society of fear and mistrust. The social cohesion starts to tear apart, and into this gap steps violence. And so these societies suffer and degrade until they collapse, unless the tyrant, king, or emperor is removed. And unfortunately, throughout history, that is mostly always done, again, through violence. We are still only a few centuries into most of our modern-day democratic leadership experiments. Political violence is still resorted to at times, even though, as we should, deplore this when it happens. To live in a democratic country, we should choose our path forward collectively, whatever that means. Not have it thrusted upon us by a single act of violence, a rigged election, or corruption at the highest levels of office. We trust that our collective humanity will guard against these democratic institutions. We hope that the constitutions, laws, and systems of governance will hold up in times of trouble. Have we prepared for times when individuals rise through our society's layers to drive their self-interests ahead of society? Or have we forgotten these lessons again? Only 80 years ago we learnt the dangers of tyrannical leadership. How did we forget those lessons so soon? Did our rites of passage ensure our children, the leaders of tomorrow, retain these lessons from our past? Nope. These tyrannical and king-like popularists continue to raise their heads in our diffused democratic societies. Our ideas of liberty and social freedom allow for the space where these pathological behaviours can ferment and grow. There's nothing wrong with a society with freedom of speech principles, because they trust that their social institutions and rules of law will monitor and protect them from these pathological people infiltrating their social leadership and decision-making roles. Again with that word, trust. But when these institutions don't monitor and protect the society from these threats, well, we're living through this right now one way or the other. How much social knowledge have we all collectively forgotten? A hell of a lot by the looks of it. The future stability of our societies is not going to only be found in relearning lessons from our past. We have to continue to adapt, make new laws and social solutions fitting for current times. It's how we evolve as a society when times are changing. We have, as global societies, matured past slavery and the practice of othering people from foreign lands, although that lesson is still being forgotten in places. We are also gradually maturing our societies away from using capital punishment as a solution for extremely antisocial people, as well as others who break our most important laws. And more recently, there have been some great achievements in our social maturity, and it's in the most important place of all, the home. Our patriarchal home structures have survived in one way or the other for as long as societies have existed. For better or for worse, apologies for the pun, this patriarchal approach to families and households has held back half of our population from finding their own success and potential. Our women. Successful women outside the home were often scoffed, scolded, and frowned upon for whatever cultural reasons that society had. But in this new world of technologically enabled independent living, the social norms are finally able to change. The man of the house is no longer needed to maintain a stable house, but some partners, mostly men but not always, continue to resort to coercive control methods to maintain their authority and influence in a marriage and family. Coercive control is a pathological behaviour. It is mostly significant or completely pathological in nature. When a partner or a marriage is at its best, both participants have full agency to be accountable and responsible for their part in the relationship. Coercive control is the removal of this agency through financial means, methods of social isolation, physical, mental, and sexual abuse, along with blackmail and other socially humiliating tactics. Countries that have enacted coercive control laws include Tasmania in 2005, England and Wales in 2015, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Ireland in 2019, and now also in Queensland, Australia as of May 2025. Other nations and states within Australia are also considering or introducing similar legislation, with ongoing debate and legislative proposals in place like Canada and New South Wales. Canada has seen legislative proposals, such as an amendment to the Criminal Code of Canada, to create a specific offence for engaging in controlling or coercive conduct. France has also taken steps to improve the judicial treatment of domestic violence, and there is a desire to better incorporate the concepts of coercive control into the justice system. Not only can we relearn old social lessons from the past, we can also create modern social principles and laws. By enacting coercive control laws, our nations and states have targeted the generational trauma cycle. It's an incredible feat, and one that needs to be extended across all nations. Of all the measures we can take to manage pathological behaviours in our societies, it's the ones at home that can cause the longest and most lasting impacts. It's these societal impacts that need addressing most, and we have taken huge steps forward in moving our society forward. That's a good thing. That's also worth talking about. So please, join in the conversation. Thanks again for taking the time to listen in. Today's episode was focused on, I've forgotten. It was on what social lessons from our past have we forgotten, and have we lost the knowledge on how to maintain parts of our current social structures. The social benefits of enacting laws against coercive control goes to the heart of this social project's mission. It's a topic we will come back to multiple times throughout this series. Too Many Arseholes is researched, written, and produced by Nobody's Project. To put this series together, we have drawn on many sources, publications, books, and podcasts. Throughout this season, we'll ask you to go and read or listen to an article, book, or podcast to accompany these episodes. Check out our show notes for recommendations for upcoming episodes and also for our sources. It is important that we acknowledge and promote the people and the work they have published that has inspired this project. And finally, we are always keen to hear from you. Do you have an experience, idea, or insight that you'd love to share with the project? If so, please send an email to contactus@toomanyarsholes.com. Visit our social media pages and please feel free to get in contact and have a better conversation with us. To support the project, you can go to our Patreon page where you can get more information on the project and support us. You can also join our Patreon group and get early and ad-free episodes as well as other benefits. You can also like, subscribe and review the podcast to help spread the conversation, and the best way to support us is to share the podcast with your family, friends and colleagues so you can have a better conversation with them. Until we catch up again, give a shit about our planet and just please, don't be an arsehole.